Hey, I'm Deidre Detterman, host of the Do It My Way podcast, where we empower women business owners and CEOs to do business on their terms with no regrets, hesitation, or fear. I'm obsessed with all things marketing. I started my career in television, and I remember sitting in countless meetings, listening to executives talk about things that needed to change, but they never did. I was always thinking, what if we did it my way? Once I became an entrepreneur and I started living life on my terms, working the hours I want to work, making the money I want to make, I started to feel success. I was finally in control of my destiny. I hope you will join me on this journey discovering how you can do it your way. I'm so excited for my next guest, LeAnne Taylor from 6 in the Morning. She's a Tulsa TV icon. She's been telling you stories for over 40 years. Now you get to hear her story on the Do It My Way podcast. Well, welcome to the Do It My Way podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to get to visit with you today.
I know, me too. I'm like Tulsa icon, TV icon here. I should probably be a little nervous interviewing you. Like, you're the interviewer.
Well,
you know?
I should be more nervous, I think, because I'm usually doing the questioning and going to a commercial break.
True.
I always have some out, and I don't think I have an out today. So I'm really excited to be here.
Yes.
And we've known each other for a while,
Yeah.
and so when you invited me, I was just honored to get to be a part of this.
Well, one thing I love about you, and this is what everyone says about you, you're exactly the same on the air as you are off the air.
I get that a lot.
You know, and that's a huge compliment.
Oh, well, thank you.
And I've worked, I worked in television for 10 years, and that's not always the case. Yeah. So I think, just that genuine, nice, caring person comes across, on the air, and you're exactly that off the air.
Well, I found early on that viewers are very, very smart. And when you try to fake or act like a certain way, they can read right through it. And then you lose credibility. You don't have much of a following. So, way, way early in my career, because you're trying to find, as a young person, as a young woman, where do I fit? What is my voice? And over 40 years in Tulsa TV, I think I've finally figured out what I'm doing. And and it seems to be working.
Yeah, it's working definitely for you. So I love that. Well, let's start with you growing up.
Sure.
So you grew up in rural Oklahoma. You did 4-H.
I did.
So kind of share with me your childhood.
So it was weird. We lived in Tulsa for a little while, and then my family wanted to get some land and animals, so we started moving further out. My mom and stepdad were both teachers in Tulsa, but we lived out in Owasso for a while, Collinsville for a while, Oologah for a while. Because
that was rural back then.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness.
Owasso was, yes.
And then when I got into 7th grade, I went to a private high school in Tulsa. So I have this rural upbringing of having a cow and having chores and responsibilities, but going to a school at the time, Holland Hall was down by Utica Square at the 8 Acres campus. I've got to tell you a quick funny story, because one time we were supposed to bring something to school that was important to us to talk about. A lot of the girls would bring maybe like ice skates or a tennis racket or maybe a project that they'd been working on. I brought my cow to Holland Hall. And we had this rattle track trailer, and we're unloading this big old Hereford heifer. She's got big horns, and all the kids were like, "What's his name?" And I'm like, "Well, it's a girl."
Yeah.
And I just think I don't think anybody's ever taught that before. But growing up in the country taught me so much responsibility. It was a 45-minute drive one way to school on roads back then that were not like the highways we have today. So I had to be disciplined to get up early, do my chores, get out the door, get to school. And I think that's really, it's so funny. I tell people I'm not a morning show person, but I play one on TV. And
You're not a morning person. There's no way.
If I could stay up late every night, I would.
You are kidding.
But in fact, when I got the job at Channel 6 to work mornings, the first question my mom asked was, "Who's going to wake you up?" And I'm like, "I am an adult woman." And she's like, "No, seriously, who's going to wake you up?" Because I would sleep. And, I was an only child, very fortunate. My mom was a teacher. So she would, I had a really easy start to the morning, pat on the back, little light on, little music, breakfast. It was just a perfect childhood, if you will. But then it was just, I didn't realize that there was an alarm clock that actually went off. Finally, she was like, you have got to get on your own. And so now I do. I've gotten up for 26 years at 2:40 a.m.
Oh, my goodness.
I do that every day, Monday through Friday.
Okay.
But Saturdays and Sundays are all about the sleeping in.
And so how late will you sleep on Saturday and Sunday?
Well, I have slept until like 10
Okay,
before. And
that's
I
good.
try to sleep the clock around, like go to bed at 10, wake up at 10. But that doesn't happen all that often anymore. But I do love to sleep and nap. And so people were really surprised because I had been doing evenings and I really love that shift. But I also found I wasn't having that much time with my family because it really pulls you away when you have to be there in the evenings. You're missing out on so much. So I missed out on a lot of mornings, which my husband learned how to do French braids on my daughter's hair. And but it's been a really incredible career given where all the things that I get to do.
Oh, and the kids get home from school. You were there.
PTA.
Yes.
And I didn't realize how vital it was to be the one that picks them up after school, because that is the most precious time, the conversations, the things that they can share. You learn so much more about where they're headed and where their mind is. And so I wouldn't trade it for anything. I tell a lot of people that I truly had the best of both worlds, being able to do a job that I love with people that I love in a community that I love, but then to be able to go home and go to PTA or pick up the kids after school, go to play practice, go to soccer practice, whatever that looked like. I didn't have to be like, well, mommy has to go back. Mommy has to do this. Mommy could be home. Now, mommy put them to bed really early. They'd be like, why are we going to bed?
7 o'clock.
Yeah. So, but over time it worked. And then as they got older, they didn't need me to put them to bed. And so mom's gone to bed and I'll catch you tomorrow.
That's so great. I love hearing those stories of balance because I think it's hard for women. You want to be the mom, the perfect mom that's there for them all the time, but then you've got your job pulling you. So it really is kind of a juggle.
My job has always been really important to me. I mean, I didn't get married till later in life. I didn't have kids until later in life because I really wanted to establish my career. A lot of women did that. I think now I'm hopeful that we might have a better life-work balance in our young people today because it was all consuming. And then you just didn't have time for the people that were important.
Right.
And things have happened and changed over my life. And I know we'll talk a little bit about significant stories, but the Oklahoma City bombing flipped the switch for me. I had other people were taking care of my daughter for me. And by the time the bombing hit, it just kind of hit me. It's like life is way too short. You don't know what tomorrow brings. And you only have this child for so long. And so that was when I started really considering making the switch from an evening show to a morning shift.
Let's talk about the Oklahoma City bombing. Okay, I know that had to be one of the most significant stories that you worked on. Walk me through that time and what you were thinking.
Well, that morning, we had made an arrangement that as an anchor that different ones of us would go on assignment. I had just had the assignment the day before, but I happened to have been in the newsroom first that day. And so we had a helicopter, we had a producer, a photographer, and we all jumped on the helicopter and flew down. And I remember taking notes like, I knew Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building, a bomb blast, downtown Oklahoma City. I had all just kind of these real bare bone facts. And I was trying to think, okay, where do we need to get a rental car? I mean, it was just so surreal
chaos.
that I had no idea what we were coming into. And then, of course, the reports started coming in that this was not just an accident, wasn't natural gas. It was truly an act of terrorism. And so to go on site, and it was a madhouse. You did have all the people that were the walking wounded, as they were called. We had a job to do in our aspect of, getting the pictures, getting the video. And back then it was all satellite truck for, sending video back. And I did do the first ABC live report that day because Dallas was the closest affiliate.
National.
Yes. And so they were like, we're just going to have you cut some stuff and they'll run it until our crews get there. And I remember I'd only been
I was
in
going to say,
TV.
you were newer.
Yeah, maybe, that was maybe 11 years and only maybe 4 years as an anchor. No scale. I mean, there's nothing that was even has ever come near that. The magnitude of that experience, and doing live shots for our station back in Tulsa, and then there's a bomb threat and you're running to a different part of the town, and then okay, everything's fine, and then seeing the morgue set. I mean, there was just so much, and I was there for 10 straight days. I did not go home. I had my clothes and stuff were brought over to me. We did morning, noon, night. We did every time, updates with all these individuals. And to know, as a mom at the time of a 3-year-old, all I could think of was that daycare center. And I remember I was like, if I had dropped off Rachel and this had happened, I just couldn't. I wouldn't. And so when I got home, we just had a real kind of a review of what is important. What are your priorities? And nothing to the magnitude of the lives that were devastated by that bombing, but it impacted us. But as usual, having a born and bred in native Oklahoma, and to see people come together was amazing, and has kind of set that Oklahoma standard that year after year we see when there's a tragedy, when there is any kind of devastation. People, that's when we see the kindness and the goodness.
Step up. Yeah, that's the beautiful part of it. To go through that. But I can't imagine, and having kids of your own. And I remember being in college and we were all watching it, and we had like one little TV in the sorority house. Everybody was surrounded around it. And then you just start thinking of all the people that don't their parents work downtown? Don't they work? And so you're trying to figure out who's down there, who do you know? I mean, so let alone trying to carry the story. It's like, do I know people down here?
The only advantage, because the thing that's different about today and then, I mean, we had to send all the video back. I rarely saw the clips that people were watching. I saw it in real life.
That makes sense.
But people would be like, I don't know how you repeatedly would see all of this stuff. And I was like, well, there was a buffer. Surprisingly, we didn't have access to monitors where we could see this all the time. And it gave us a little bit of separation, insulation. So when we had conversations about it, it still was important, but we didn't take quite as much trauma. That happened when we got back.
Right.
The reality of what all we did, how long we were there. It was almost like when you got home, you were like, what just happened?
Yeah, you're probably in shock, and you're moving so fast. And
you got a job to do.
Right.
Just like the first responders, they all of the afterwards is when it really hit home.
Yeah. When did you know you wanted to be in television?
Probably, I would say junior in high school. I'd say I wanted to be a lawyer because I watched a lot of Perry Mason when I was a kid, until I realized that, not everybody, is not guilt. I mean, is innocent. And then I thought maybe a prosecutor, because I think I love to, argue. But when I got to ORU, I'd seen quite a few other people from my church, young women who had been interested in television. And one in particular went to ORU and then got a job. She was a director. And I just thought that would be so cool. And so I always wanted to be behind the scenes until my sophomore year in college. And we had to do projects. And my first project I did, and when I got finished, I just had so many people like, hey, that was really good. And then people would say, hey, would you be the talent on my project? And I was like,
maybe
yes.
This is my thing.
And then I distinctly remember standing at this one point, and the lights were there, and I was doing the presentation, and I thought, I could get paid to do this forever.
To talk?
Yes. And so it was really a wonder. So because I was not that good behind the scenes, like a director, I'd be like, audio, video, punching button, I'd be like dancing, playing, and I'd be like, no, you just go out into the studio. We'll take care of the important stuff.
Everyone has their place.
They do. They really do. And so my mom and all my family were teachers. And there was a part of me at one point, I thought maybe I'd missed my calling, but I think I am a teacher in a way, just in a different platform.
Definitely. Well, you reach a lot more people and impact a lot more people this way.
And it's so cute because having been on TV for so long, a lot of young people who are now a little bit older, they'll be like, were you my teacher? And I'm like, no, I was the girl. I was the girl on the news every morning that your parents made you watch while you were having cereal before you went to school.
Funny?
Yeah. They
like, I know you.
It's usually the first. They either think I was a teacher, counselor, somebody that with a parent's friend, but I'll be like, maybe the girl on the news, and they're like, that's it. It's really funny.
Well, there's nowhere you could walk in Tulsa without people recognizing you.
Well, it's funny.
What is that like?
It's wonderful. It really is. It has its moments. I did have one individual follow me into the bathroom to finish a conversation, and I thought I'd kind of finished it already. My family has always been very supportive of that. We go out to eat. Can I get a picture? Here, we'll take the picture for you, or you want an autograph. And so people are always very kind, and they're always very like, hey, I don't want to bother you. And in my opinion, it's like, I did it the other day. I saw somebody, and I won't name names, but I was just like, oh, hi. And I was like, they don't know me. Yeah. And I was like, is it too much to ask for a picture? I'm like, no, not at all. And you're just like, oh, I'm completely on the opposite side of that equation now. And it's funny because you'll get a kick out of this. So I get mistaken for Lori.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
isn't that funny?
What?
Yeah.
And she's like, what?
You guys have both been there for so long.
Well, and then she told me the other day she got mistaken for Tess, who's pregnant. So it's just like, oh, okay. But I
just think of the name.
As long as they get the station right, that's all we care about.
That's great.
Yeah.
I love that. And you guys have a lot of people that have been there at longevity.
We do. We're really fortunate.
Such a great organization.
Well, and we're just really blessed. I mean, I'm a big fan of our boss and Griffin Communications, and the fact that it's all about Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. I thought I could go someplace else. I thought I might like to go to Dallas, because that's where everybody was going, or Atlanta, check out CNN. But after the first probably 5 years in television, it dawned on me, I really like Tulsa. Mm-hmm. We had the helicopter, we traveled, we had all the bells and whistles that the big markets had, but we didn't have the cost of living, the traffic. The crime, the craziness. And I was telling stories of people that I knew or the news was impacting. And so after about probably that 6-year mark, and then when I became an evening anchor, it was like, I don't want to go anyplace else. This is my home. And this is where I want to fit in. And of course, we do travel a lot. We're fortunate to have a company that invests where the Oklahoma story is. We'll travel to there.
You guys have done some really amazing.
Well, we're
Toby
really,
Keith.
Really proud of the work. I had a chance to go to Uganda. I'll never forget this. You'll get a. So one of my bosses called, and it was right before. He's like, "Hey, we've got an opportunity to go to Uganda," and then it was like total silence, because I'm like, "Did I hear him right?"
Right.
And he goes, "That's in Africa."
Yeah.
I'm like, I know where it is.
Right.
And he said, well, we've got this thing called Pros for Africa. There were former OU football players who were at that time playing in the NFL. Adrian Peterson, Tommy Harris, Mark Clayton. These guys were coming together to take a mission trip to Uganda to help this woman in her quest to help young women who had been part of a civil war. They were learning new skills and trades, and these were Oklahoma doctors that were going. They were technicians, and then these football players. And so we got to go and document 10 days down in Uganda.
What a great experience!
Sister Rosemary was highlighted at one point by the president back then, and it just was a remarkable experience to travel and to get to see the joy in so many. There was nothing for these folks to be happy about. And when these Oklahomans came in and provided medical care, simple things like headache medicine, blood pressure medicine, it changed their world overnight. And to see how Oklahomans impacted it was a great way for me to share that story with our viewers.
And Griffin's only locally owned television station, correct?
Now I'll just tell you this, because I think because I grew up here. My mom grew up in Muskogee, and Muskogee's where Griffin Grocery is. And so Mr. Griffin had two boys. Those boys, one's the grocery boy, the other one's the TV boy. And the TV boy, David Griffin, is the chief operating officer of Griffin Media. And the companies, it's the two stations, Oklahoma City, News 9, and Tulsa, Channel 6, two real legacy stations, you'd say. The people that have worked there have been people that have put down roots and chosen to stay in Oklahoma. And so the fact that, we have our whole, it's to keep people safe, informed, and entertained. And if it has to do with any of the borders, Oklahoma is what we're all about.
That's great. So talk to me about television, because I know I worked in television years ago, and it changed so much, from the time I started to the time I left, but that was years ago. So from the time you started till today, what are some of the things that are different in television?
Well, early on, things started to change. We started using, instead of big old equipment, and you'd have like a deck that had a 3/4 inch tape in it, and then it went to beta, and everything was a lot more compact. Well, nowadays you have what they call dejeros, these backpacks. We would watch movies back in the day, and like say for a movie that, there was a riot at a prison, and they roll up and they went live in the prison, and you were like, that can't happen. There's cables and there's satellite, and you have to get the live shot. Well, now that's possible. You roll up with a backpack. You can literally go any place live in the world with the cell service, and
That's incredible.
Well, and then in the studio, we have automated cameras, so it's all computer programmed. Well, if there's a 2-shot or a close-up, it's all in there and it's coded. They punch a button, those cameras move, get set.
That's crazy.
Teleprompter is all voice activated. So somebody like me who goes off script or ad libs,
right,
that prompter's like, where am I going now, lady?
Gosh, I can't imagine that.
Yeah. And then scripts. This was the hardest thing for me. And I still think it's a disadvantage for young people. Your scripts, as an anchor, allow you to make marks for, inflection, for information, for names. And having that iPad, it's, I'm advancing pages just by, tapping the screen. Where those tangible pages, I could look down, I'd see my notes. So that's been a real challenge to get used to reading off of a teleprompter. Off of your iPad. And we don't have the crew in the studio like we used to. And there was
camaraderie. It was a lot.
And then you could tell if something landed right, like if what you said made sense or was
by their
funny.
look on their face.
Yeah, or their gasp, like, did she really say that? So, good and bad. I mean, I have to realize that technology is it's going to advance,
stay.
Whether you're going to get on board or not. And I've had to get on board. I'll be honest with you. I've had conversations about, I really need that paper, and they're like, you really don't.
Right.
And so
it looks cleaner on set. It does look really nice.
Well, and think about a 5.5-hour show in the morning. How many reams of paper you go through? So I mean, it's ecologically friendly. It's all of the things that it should be. But my mind still says, man, I still need to hold on to something.
Right. I know. No,
and what
totally
do I do when the cameras all go down and the technology isn't right? And it does. Everything can't be perfect every day. But we just kind of...
You put your smile on and
just
keep
power
going.
on through it and go to a commercial break.
So you say you're not a morning person. How do you get up and have that personality and that energy and that, because you have bad days, right? I mean, and we're going to get into breast cancer and all that, where you showed up every single day.
Yeah.
So how do you get into that mindset in the morning? Is there something you do, like a morning routine, or?
I put the alarm clock all the way across the room.
So you have to get up.
And I don't have my phone in the room. My phone's downstairs. And so I get up to a real alarm clock with a real radio that plays the music. And I physically have to get out of bed and walk across. And if I don't, then I get an elbow, it's time to get up.
Right.
I have a routine, I shower the night before, I lay all my clothes out, I put everything's ready to go. Literally, I can probably be ready in about 30 minutes. Out the door, it's another 10 minutes. So I wake up at 2:40, I'm at work at 3:40.
That's impressive.
Prep the work until about 4:40, 4:45, then I go and touch up. Funny story, I have always gone to work with my makeup and hair ready to go. The only thing I don't have is my lipstick on. And I've done that since day one because I was always afraid that I got there.
You didn't have time.
There could be a breaking news story.
Right.
Has that ever happened? Never. Not one time. But you know when it will?
You're prepared.
Next time I show up without any hair and makeup done.
Right.
So, but I always laugh. I get a kick. People are like, do you do your own hair? I'm like, clearly I do my own hair. Do your own makeup? Yep. Now we have tutorials. We have people that come in and kind of give us guidance. And I really appreciate it. I had some women early on in my career that were instrumental in guiding me to finding my brand, knowing who I was. And, there are styles that work for me. I've always been this is crazy because people who know me know I'm a minimalist when it comes to jewelry and all of that. So I don't usually wear a lot of stuff because the story should be the focus. And so over time, I've learned, and so having all that ready, getting ready, and then being at work. And I like to prep. I usually, because we do have so many shows, I always go through the 5 and as much of the 6 as I can. A lot of the 7 won't be done yet, but I have an idea of what those stories are going to be. Our 9 o'clock is my favorite hour because we have long, extended interviews. And my co-anchor, Dave, and I really work a lot on creating those stories. There are things that are interesting us that we think, for example, Joshua Morrow, who's from Oklahoma, plays Nick Newman on The Young and the Restless.
Oh, yes.
His son, Crew, is now on another CBS soap called Bold and the
funny.
Beautiful. So I contacted, and we did a great side-by-side. Josh is 50. his son's 20, and here are these two, you've got the ending kind of a career, the beginning.
Right.
So those are things that gets me out of bed.
Right.
I know that day I'm going to get to talk to, I'm going to share this story about. Yeah. And that's what really motivates me. It really does, because I think every day is different. The stories are going to be similar. We're going to have shootings, and we're going to have robberies, and we're going to have the weather, and we're going to have Christmas comes every December. But it's how we treat those, how we're going to do it different this year.
Let's talk about Miss Oklahoma, because I walked in later because I was in my car and I actually Googled, because I saw in the show notes that you were in the Miss Oklahoma pageant.
I was.
And I was like, I bet I can find that. And there was a vault story, I think Rick Wells did, and it showed you, and you're walking across it. I'm like, you look exactly the same. First of all, like in a great way, same smile and all of that. But when was that?
Well, that was particular, I think, was when I was Miss Tulsa, which was 1982.
Okay.
So probably my senior year in high school, one of my very best friends from 4-H, Mary Salee, was Miss Collinsville. And she said, the pageant's coming up, and I think you should enter. And I'm like, oh, no, I'm not wearing a swimsuit. We're not going to do that. And she said, but the scholarship money, you could win, $1,000. You could win, and if you go on to Miss Oklahoma, you could win more. And sometimes they even allow like a full scholarship to places like ORU where you want to go.
That's great.
So it all kind of like came in together, and my parents spent a ton of money for me to go to a private high school, and so I was
teachers,
and I was not going to be the national merit finalist.
Right.
I was going to get this massive,
right.
So it was kind of like, maybe I should try to help my parents now. And so I entered that pageant and I won, and I went to Miss Oklahoma that year as Miss Collinsville. You can enter several times until you win or age out.
Yeah.
And so that first night, I won swimsuit.
Look at you, and you didn't want to do it.
I had no idea that, like, I was like, okay. I thought the pageant. They were like, no, you still have 2 more nights.
You're like, am I done?
I know. So the girl who won talent that night was a girl by the name of Susan Powell, who went on to be Miss America.
Okay.
She won.
Wow.
She's a wonderful opera singer. Did the aria, the telephone song. I mean, we were all just, oh my goodness, this is amazing. But my most favorite picture is. Me and Susan, because we were preliminary night winners. Miss America was there as the MC that year, who was Cheryl Pruitt, Salem, and then Jill Elmore was Miss Oklahoma. And it's one of my most prized photos, because I'm like, if I could tell that little 18-year-old girl,
right.
You're okay. You're going to be fine. This is a great path for you. And I at that time, I was going to ORU, and I was going to be in TV, and that was my path. And so the next year, I was third runner-up that year, which was a remarkable
Amazing.
feat. The next
and you've
year,
never done a pageant before.
And the next year, I decided I was going to go to ORU my freshman year. I'm not going to focus on pageants. I need to focus on college. Well, 40 pounds later, my mom's like, you're coming back home, and we're going to talk about pageants again. And so the next year I became Miss Tulsa, which was a great title. I was 4th runner-up. And then my final year I served as Miss Stroud, and I was 3rd runner-up again. But I told myself, this is going to be it. This is the best I'm going to be in these pageants. And I really need to pursue my degree. And what happened was that next year that I didn't compete, I got an internship at Channel 8.
Okay.
And then I got a job. So I've always, and I tell young people this all the time, that my goal was so vivid. I mean, I knew I was going to be Miss Oklahoma. I was going to go to Miss America. I had this I was like, this is the direction. And all of a sudden that door shut hard. In fact, I tell people, I was like, do you want to talk about this? Because I might break down and cry. I've been through a lot of therapy. Actually, that part is not true. But
right.
I did feel like, where am I supposed to go? Well, then when that door opened, and now 40 years later, I've never doubted that would have been great. It would have been so fun. But I tell the young women, there's only one crown winner, but you have to use this as a stepping stone to your next adventure. These girls are not going to win, but what are you going to take away from this experience that will further enhance your life?
And you've probably touched more lives, honestly, in what you're doing now.
Yeah,
I think telling stories and
I would agree with you.
You
I would
know?
absolutely, because I think there's, and you know, this is Miss Oklahoma. I truly believe, especially back then, there were not a lot of scholarship opportunities for young women, I'm so grateful because ORU offered a full year tuition. So I got like,
oh, that's amazing.
I got like $38,000 over those 4 years,
That's
and my
great.
parents were very grateful for that.
Teachers.
Yeah,
That's great.
for sure.
And I'm sure that gave you confidence, like doing those pageants to turn around and go do that internship
So,
and get on the air.
I was an intern in high school at Channel 8, and I met a few people there. Fast forward 4 years, I won an internship at Channel 8 again. When I went, I'm a former Miss Oklahoma, or Miss Tulsa. I've interviewed the mayor. I've interviewed,
So you're not intimidated?
I've been a part of these events at ribbon cutting. So, and I think partly that's why I got hired, because not as Miss Tulsa, but because I had connections, and of course they didn't have to pay me anything either. I was like, "Can I pay you to go to work here?" And I just felt like they were able to take this, really malleable. I mean, they could mold me and create me to the reporter that they wanted me to be. Even though I knew some things, but I did not know anything as a 22-year-old starting at, my very first assignment after graduation was the Morris Tornadoes. I show up for work in a linen suit, reptile shoes, and all of a sudden they're going, "You're going to Morris because there was a tornado." Now, I wasn't the reporter. I was just a shadow. But immediately I stayed in the truck. I was like, I am not walking around dressed like this. This is embarrassing.
Right.
And I said, that's not something you ever learn in a school book.
No.
It's just on the job training.
Was there someone at that young age when you got your first job that kind of took you along or mentored you along the way?
Well, at that time, it was every man and woman and child for themselves. I mean, it really was a cutthroat business, very much so. Not the kind of the mentoring that we have today, because a lot of people saw young people as a threat. But, I loved Barbara Walters, Connie Chung. I mean, there were some network anchors that were remarkable. Having grown up in Tulsa, someone like Becky Dixon, Carol Lambert was working there at the time. She became a real dear friend. And so there were people but I tell you, it was just a lot of hard knocks and figuring it out and trying to find your voice.
And honestly, when you get an anchor position, like, people want your job. I mean,
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they sure do.
You're sitting in the spotlight, and they want your job.
I was not the first choice for the 5 p.m. anchor when, at the time at the station, I was devastated because I had worked all this time. I'd been the weekend anchor. It just seemed like the natural progression. And I was like, I at that moment, I reevaluated, am I even in the right place? They hired someone. She came in 6 months later. She didn't like it and left. And so by default, I got my job. But and I was an anchor there for 10 years. Medical reporter. Medical reporter was a game changer for me.
I remember that
when I first started as a young. You mentioned mentors. I did have Marilyn McCain was a little bit older than me. Was the health reporter for years. Health Watch at Channel 8, and her desk was right next to mine, and I watched her work the phones. I watched her write her stories, and I just observed this. I mean, she was no nonsense, but incredibly passionate. And when she left, she said, "I think you'd be a good health reporter." And having seen how she came in and say, "Here's the story I'm covering today," and she'd be gone. And I liked that. And I liked that. It was like,
no option.
No, well, they
doing.
just said, do a health story today. What is top of mind? What are people talking about? And so that's allergies. So she set up something at the allergy clinic, and she's out the door. And so I like that. I can come up with a story. I can set it up and create it and go. And I did that for 10 years. And significantly, one of the most important years of my life was the breast cancer stories that I turned called Buddy Check 8. We encouraged women to do breast self-exams. We encouraged them to find a buddy, a woman in their life, if it was their mom, a grandma, a sister, an aunt, a best friend, to just remind it, hey, each month on the 8th of the month, hey, have you done your breast self-exam? Are you doing your checks? And I did a mammogram, a baseline mammogram, because I was telling everybody to do it. And I thought, well, maybe I should get one.
And you were young.
I was 35 at that time.
Because they think they say, 40 now? Yeah.
So, and that was kind of, I just wanted to experience it. It wasn't so much for, we're going to look for it. But then 6 years later, I had been doing breast self-exam. So when I found that lump, I was like, that's not that's not normally there. So I gave it a month and I was like, no, I really probably need to check this out. I gave it another month and went and see my OBGYN, and she said, I don't think it's anything, but we're going to get you in and get it checked. And then
You were 41.
Mm-hmm, I went to a breast surgeon, and she said, I want to do a needle biopsy. We're going to pull a little bit of the cells out and we'll send them off, and then I'll let you know. And then I got that call that so many women have heard, you have cancer. And she called, and I remember it was very matter of fact. I mean, I was almost like, I was paralyzed. I was completely shocked. But I was like, okay, this is November 17th. I have Thanksgiving's coming. Then I've got Christmas plans.
Right.
And it's
I'm
like,
busy. I don't have
time for cancer.
Right.
And she said, well, we can get you in for surgery in December. And I said, well, I have a Christmas party, and can I do it on this day? And she said, sure. And so we did the surgery. The tumor was very small. But after that phone call, I hung up, and it was just,
oh gosh.
because it was like, I'm 41. I have 2 little kids.
You've been doing stories on it.
I know, and I knew the outcomes of a lot of those stories aren't always great. And I already had my husband remarried. I had somebody else raising my kids. And it was like, stop. You've got to just, and I talked to my husband, I talked to my mom, and then I talked to my pastor. And it was after I'd gone to my church. I'm a big believer in the power of prayer and faith and healing. And the Bible talks about being anointed with oil. And so I did that. And it was like a peace came over me that I was like, I know God has never failed me. I wanted to be Miss Oklahoma, but here I am. I wanted to do this, but here I am. And I'm like, he's not going to fail me now. And so the tumor was very small. It hadn't spread. I did have to go through chemo and radiation, which is not always the chapters that you want. I lost all my hair. My eyebrows got really thin. Viewers got really concerned and upset. And it's, being on TV is hard enough, but to go through that journey in front of people.
Can't imagine.
But once they found out what I was going through, the outpouring of support was incredible. I mean, cards and letters and knickknacks and so many women saying, I've been there. And that was very encouraging and allowed me. And I remember distinctly talking to one of the doctors, and he said, you will have a platform because of what you do and where you are. You will have a voice to share your story and make an impact.
And you've been such an advocate. You were the president of the affiliate, Tulsa affiliate.
Yes, when Komen was local and I was the affiliate's president, served on the board for a number of years, have been at the race. This was my 21st race for the cure. When you all contacted me, I really asked if I could do October because I wanted this to raise awareness. I want women who say, oh, I'm so tired of hearing that. And but here's the deal. As soon as it becomes your diagnosis or somebody you love, you can't get information fast enough. And to me, I don't want any woman ever to walk this journey alone. It is hard enough to have to go through changing all the things that make you a woman, and to have to do that without any support. It's just not right.
It's not right. Yeah.
And so I've been very blessed. Komen is one of those organizations that I support for what they've done with the money in the past and what they're doing it with currently. The research is phenomenal. Think about when my grandma or great grandma, I mean, it was a death sentence. And now through all the clinical trials and studies that Komen helps support, along with the federal government, there's a drug called tamoxifen. I did a story on it back when I was a medical reporter, and they were doing a clinical trial to see if it would help fight breast cancer if a woman has certain hormonal therapies that feed the cancer. I did the story on that. Now, 10 years later, I was taking that drug. And so those are kinds of the aha moments.
And God has placed you in these places,
and to see each of these kind of building blocks. That's what I tell people. I'm like, I don't know why I or you or we are going through this, but I'm telling you, this will be a foundation for something greater.
That's incredible. Well, thank you for
I'll be
everything
taking
you've
up
done.
an offering now.
Yeah, exactly. No, you need to. No, you are the perfect relatable person. And to go through that on the air, I can't think of very many people that would go with no hair.
Right.
Honestly.
Yeah.
Because women in their hair, there's
It's-
like a thing, right? When you
Yeah.
have a bad hair day,
Well,
it ruins your whole day.
But now I've had a no hair day.
Yeah.
So that's what I tell people. I said,
Bad hair day doesn't mean anything.
everything's in perspective after.
So
And it's
true.
not just, it's not just a chronic illness, a diagnosis. It can be a life change. It's something, anything that disrupts where your norm is. Attitude is hugely important. Choices, you can choose you choose joy. You choose the this is how I'm going to look at this. I'm almost to a fault that, I just can't see negative. There's so much in the world that is, that it's like, I don't want to fill that.
Well, especially on the news. A lot of the things that you have to report on are things that are actually going on, and they're not all great.
And we need to know about them.
Right.
You need to know that
It's
there's a
important.
hurricane, that there's people that are hurt. You have to know about these shootings or whatever's going on, because that way, you're educated, you're informed. You can't bury your head in the sand.
Right.
And that's what I tell women about their diagnosis. Like, if you notice a lump, a bump, a bruise, a rippling, anything that's just not, you're like, that doesn't seem right. You need to get that checked out, because information is power. And if you ignore something and let it go, it can get way worse than getting I know the diagnosis
And
is
early.
hard, but the percentage of survival is just great. Huge percentages of women live 5 years and beyond when they have these detections early.
And so now you just go every year like normal?
Yeah, I do. I for a while there, I went and had a breast MRI which was really intense, because I wanted, if there was even a microscopic cell, I wanted to make sure that that they saw it. And over time, you hit these milestones. 5 years, you exhale. 10 years, you exhale.
Wow.
I'm 21 years in November.
Wow,
so
that's
it's
amazing.
Yeah, and some days it's way in the rearview mirror, and some days it's lump in my throat the same day.
Right.
And the race, there was a lady, there's a 51-year survivor, and there was a girl, there was a 4-month survivor.
Oh, wow.
So going to the race, seeing all that pink, hearing the stories of these other women, I think that's why we're here on earth, to help others, whatever that journey looks like. And so I'm very fortunate and blessed. And, the true reasons I got out of bed every day were for my children. But I know, and I've talked to so many people, I'm not going to look at you because I'll start crying.
Yeah.
But I know that I've spoken to so many places that men will come up and say, I prayed for you when you were going through this. And I know I felt it, because there were days, as is often the case when you have any kind of hardship, it is so easy to pull the covers up and say, I'm just gonna check out. I'm not gonna be a part of this. But I would get up, I would wipe off my bald head, I'd put my wig on, and I'd be at work.
And to go be on TV.
Yeah. And what would happen was, each step of that journey, I would feel stronger and stronger. And then I'd be on the show and I'd be like, how did I get here? You know?
Right.
And so I clearly believe that the power of prayer can help people get through these hard parts of life.
Well, thank you for your transparency through all of that, because I think all of the women that have been diagnosed since then, to see someone like you that is strong, got through it, and just with such grace is amazing.
Well, I
So-
think it's kind of become my mission. And so everybody has kind of a reason and what they're trying to help others do. And for me, it's clearly it's just how I navigate.
So what do you do when you're not on television and doing all these great nonprofit, emceeing events and things like that? What's a day like with LeAnne?
Well, I
outside of
love
that?
pickleball.
Okay.
But I've got a bum knee right now.
Yeah, oh,
so
shoot.
yeah, so
It
I
is
was
fun.
It is a blast. So I play a lot of pickleball. I love to play cards, a game called Hand, Knee, and Foot.
What is that? I don't know
Well,
about
it's
that.
a little bit. It's a canasta game.
Okay.
And
You play with like a
Yes,
group?
uh-huh, I
Okay,
have
like a bunko?
Yes,
type?
exactly. There's just
Yeah.
3 other girls that I play with, and
Okay.
sometimes my mom will sub
Yeah.
in or whatever. But we'll have like little mini tournaments and that kind of thing.
Oh, wow, that's
And-
serious.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's really serious. And it's a great time, and I don't like to lose. Does that
Yeah.
surprise
No,
you? Yeah,
it's great.
It's really shocking. But I try. Now it's kind of neat. I'm empty nester, and so I'm like rediscovering time with my husband,
Right.
which is really
I'm right
kind of
there
like
too, yeah.
how have you been the last so many years, and he really appreciates it. We've rejoined our choir. This is so cool. So when I was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2003, our church had really put out a call to find your place to serve. And so I told my husband, I said, let's just join the choir. I think that would be fun. And so January was our first rehearsal. And I had been diagnosed, shortly thereafter. And I was just like, they told me to be really careful and not to get out.
Right.
And I was like, we're going.
Yeah.
I'm going to choir. And so I started losing my hair. I started wearing these really crazy wigs to church, to choir practice.
And they probably didn't have as good of wigs back then.
Well,
Today,
no,
they
the
look
the wigs
super
I was
real.
wearing were crazy wigs. Like I
Yeah.
had
Oh,
like
you
a
mean
yarn.
real crazy.
Yeah, I wore like a yarn Raggedy Ann wig. I have a
Might as well make light of it.
I did. And what it did was people look at that, they're like, well, clearly that's a wig. So they're like, well, how are you doing? And it opens up dialogue, doesn't make people feel as uncomfortable. But I tell the story a lot. I thought I was joining the choir to help them. I joined the choir for them to help me.
Right.
They walked alongside me during that therapy. So that was in 2004 was really when we started choir. Fast forward to 2024, and my husband and I have rejoined that choir. Our son Nick, who is now 24, is in that choir.
Oh,
so we have
look
these
at
moments where
that.
I'm like, oh, I've come to a full circle moment.
Right.
I've always loved singing. That was my talent in the pageant. That
Okay.
was
I was gonna ask you that.
what I loved in high school. It was the musicals and being performing and stuff like that. And so being back in the choir has given, it fills my heart with joy. But
Full circle.
it's work. I mean, we have rehearsals on Wednesday nights, and our choir director is amazing. But he's we want it to sound
Yeah,
right and good.
right.
40-piece orchestra in front of us. I mean, it is a fantastic
That's incredible.
service. And so that's what I do. I find those kinds of things, and then I do MC a lot. I tried to narrow it down. I bet a lot of people can relate to this, where you just can't say no. Especially
help everyone, yeah.
Yeah. But I was able to say, if it's not family or church or work, if it's breast cancer, I'm gonna
Right.
clearly do that. But there are some things that I just fallen in love with, and I'm like, I've got to be there for that organization.
Right. But then you also have to have some me time. You know?
I've been really good about kind of margins, creating those margins. And in fact, I just got asked to be on a board the other day, and my email, I just sat there and I was like, I really would like to, but I don't have the time.
Right.
And so I just basically said, that's my thing, is I'll MC events and for that one night,
Right.
as opposed to that full year commitment to the board.
And that's your talent. I mean,
It's
people
really
seeing you there,
and
that's your talent.
If you ever see me on a board,
Yeah.
know that's my gift, because I'm just like I'm always like looking around, I'm chatting, and I'm like, they're like, we need to stay focused, it's like, otherwise you're going to be in charge of this.
Right.
And I'm like, no, so
That's
it's a
great.
lot of fun, and there are so many great philanthropic organizations in Tulsa. I mean, there are
really
people
are.
that are genuinely they are called to
Yes.
help our community, and
They
so
really are.
it's nice to be able to come alongside them occasionally and help out.
So now everything you know today, what would you tell your younger self? That girl coming out of OU, trying to find a job, what would your advice be?
That is such a great question. Because things like don't sweat the small stuff. That's a big one. Give yourself some grace. I think we are really hard on ourselves, whether it be, our weight, our hair, our makeup, our goals, it's always go, go, go. And I wish I'd slowed down a little bit more. I wish I'd relaxed a little bit more. There are sometimes I think I wish I was kinder to people. I think I was in such a hurry to climb the ladder. People will say, "Oh, you interviewed me," and my first thought was like, "Oh, I hope I was kind." I mean,
You were.
but you have that moment
Right.
where just like I remember I was really rattled, or I was racing, or I was doing something.
News
and-
director's yelling at
Yes.
you behind the scenes.
And back then, I mean, it was a cigarette,
Oh, yeah.
right in your face. It was a very different climate back then. And so you had that pressure.
It was a lot of pressure.
And so I think those would be the things. It's like there'll be times that that you're overwhelmed, but just take a breath, and you're going to get through it. And ask for help, And I say that to people that are going through any chronic illness or struggling. I think we have a tendency to have this superwoman strategy that I don't need anybody. I can do all of this. And breast cancer clearly knocked that out of me, because I had one of my friends say, don't rob us of a blessing. Let us provide you with meals. Let us come and help you do these things. And I found out that by letting that go, they were blessed, then they blessed me.
Right. That's great.
Yeah.
So what's next for LeAnne Taylor? I mean, you've been such a Tulsa TV icon for
That's
so
a
many
great
years.
question. If anybody has anything for me to do. No, it's so funny. I still have a little there in the tank. So
You have a
I'm
lot of gas in the
not quite ready to give it up, but I kind of want to start scaling back. I think there are interviews that I still haven't done. I don't know what they are. If you're like, well, what do you want to do? I don't know. last year was a perfect example. ORU ended up going to the College World Series. I'm watching that game. The next morning, that night, I'm going to bed, and my husband, he's like, "You're still up?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "You're trying to figure out a way to go to Omaha,
game?
aren't you?" And
Yeah.
I'm like, "Yes, I think we should go cover it." And so the next morning, I pitched. My husband's a videographer, and so I said, "We can drive up Friday."
Is he at the station?
No, he
Okay,
was. He
okay.
was. He used to be in sports, and
Okay.
that's a whole nother story for another podcast. But he's got a video background and
Yeah.
understands, can run equipment and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So we drove up to Omaha in my car, and we got all the credentials, and we covered. I did 17 live shots from Friday to Monday.
That's fun.
And it was a blast.
Yeah.
There were so many connections. The only team that had ever gone to the World Series from ORU was the 1978
yeah.
team.
No, I remember.
They were there.
Yeah.
So I got to talk with them. And there were a lot of connections
Yes.
from Oklahoma. So I was, they played at Owasso under Coach
Yes.
Larry Turner or
Oh,
this.
yeah.
And I would never have said, I want to cover a College World Series.
Right.
So when it happened, it was like such a joy. So I don't know what. I think I've got maybe 5 in me. I'm not
Yeah.
sure how
Yeah.
that looks, though. I really don't. Because it could be like part-time. It could be,
Right.
just doing 1 hour. It could be doing all 5. I don't know. And I have several books in my head.
Right.
I think everybody feels like
Yes.
that. And I've seen a lot of really good breast cancer awareness books, but I have a couple of ideas that might work too. So anyway, I'm excited about the future. It's weird though, because I'm honest. I'm 62, and I feel like there's way more behind me than in front of me, and I just want to make these years mean something.
Right.
And so it's kind of like it's kind of like a white blank space,
Yeah.
and I can kind of fill in what I want.
Well, you could do anything that you want to do.
I don't think so. There are some things that I clearly cannot
well,
do. I cannot do anything technology because I'm like, my husband's just like, hand me the remote.
Right.
You have now just, we have no channels showing up on the DVR or whatever.
But
so.
speaker, podcaster, author, all of that fits in. TV consultant. You could be consulting new anchors coming out, right?
Let me get my pad. I need to write all these things down. But that's what's great is the options are out there. And
You really can.
now it's really even, you're doing this. If you have a phone, you
Right.
can be a content
Right.
creator.
Yeah.
And our world is very different
That's
like
right.
that.
Yeah,
So-
I do a lot of audio podcasts, and it's just me with one microphone and my phone. Download it to the app, and
you're there.
Yeah,
Isn't that-
so? It really there's so many possibilities. But you are such a breath of fresh air
Thank
and
you.
so much fun. And
have we? Oh my Lord! I'm so sorry.
It's dinner time.
I was going to say, it's like I've got to get to work.
Yeah,
exactly. I didn't realize I'd gone till tomorrow. Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for
Yes.
this voice because I think it's really important. I think a lot of people see successful women, Paula Marshall Chapman
Right.
from Bama, and you see these women, you're like, how did they get there? How do they manage their lives? And to be able to hear some of that backstory, I think it's just really helpful for all of us to be able to grow.
it is definitely. Well, I've enjoyed every minute. So
Me too.
Thank you so much.
That was awesome. Thank you. Woo.
Thank you for listening to the Do It My Way podcast. If you're wanting to build a personal brand, but you aren't sure where to start, I want you to book a discovery call with me at DeirdreDetterman.com. I hope you are empowered today to do business on your terms with no regrets, hesitation, or fear. Again, head over to DeirdreDetterman.com and click on Get a Quote.